Officer Thompson stands rigid at his security post in the downtown courthouse, wearing a scowl that has become as much a part of his uniform as his badge and gun, while his eyes narrow at every person walking through the grand marble entrance. His 20 years on the force have taught him to read people like books, or so he believes, scanning faces and body language, looking for signs of guilt or deception, when his attention locks onto a black man entering through the heavy brass doors, wearing what Thompson immediately categorizes as too expensive of a suit for someone heading to court. The material, clearly high-end Italian wool, paired with handmade leather shoes that probably cost more than his monthly salary. The man carries himself with unmistakable confidence, shoulders back, head high, briefcase swinging casually at his side. But Thompson has seen this act hundreds of times before, defendants dressing up trying to fool the judge into thinking they're upstanding citizens, when really they're just wolves in designer clothing. The officer feels his jaw tighten as he watches the man breeze through the metal detectors, nodding politely to the security staff, while other courthouse regulars, lawyers, clerks, and administrators stream past in their routine morning rush. Thompson notes how the man checks his watch, a sleek gold timepiece that catches the morning light streaming through the tall windows, another red flag in his mind. Because real professionals are always early, never checking the time like they're worried about making it to their hearing. The marble floors echo with footsteps as Thompson makes his decision, moving away from his post near the information desk, where he's stationed every Monday morning, his boots clicking against the polished stone, as he intercepts the man's path towards courtroom 3, where most first appearances happen. The officer has stopped countless suspects using this exact move, a subtle yet firm blocking maneuver that leaves no doubt about his authority while giving him perfect positioning to react if things go south. His right hand automatically shifts closer to his weapon, a habit ingrained through years of training and street experience. A morning crowd continues their usual dance around them, some slowing to watch the scene unfold, while others hurry past, heads down, avoiding involvement like city dwellers always do. Thompson sees the man's eyes flick to his hovering hand, then back to his face, the expression unchanged, still confident, still unruffled, which only serves to reinforce the officer's suspicion, because innocent people show fear when confronted by law enforcement. That's what his experience tells him. The courthouse lobby feels suddenly warmer as Thompson draws himself up to his full height, using his bulk to establish dominance, while morning sunlight streams through the massive windows, creating dramatic shadows across the marble floor that seem to underscore the tension of the moment. Other officers at their posts pretend not to watch, but Thompson knows they're paying attention, ready to respond if he needs backup. Even though this is a courthouse and everyone here has already gone through security, his instincts tell him something isn't right about this man. And Officer James Thompson has built his entire career on trusting those instincts. They kept him alive on the streets, earned him commendations and respect, guided him through countless arrests and confrontations, marking him as a cop who knows how to spot trouble before it happens. But in this moment, standing in the echoing courthouse lobby with the morning light streaming down and the crowds flowing around them like a river around stones, he has no idea that his instincts are about to betray him in spectacular fashion, leading to a confrontation that will fundamentally change not only his career, but his entire worldview. Officer Thompson plants his feet firmly in the marbled courthouse hallway, his stocky frame becoming an immovable barrier, while other courthouse visitors flow around him like water around a stone, his face hardening into the stern mask of authority that has served him well through 2 decades of law enforcement. The morning light streaming through towering windows catches his polished badge, making it gleam like a warning beacon as he raises his hand in a universal stop gesture. The black man in the expensive suit halts his progress, maintaining that irritating air of composure that sets Thompson's teeth on edge, while the officer studies him with the practiced eye of someone who has conducted thousands of stops and interventions, taking in every detail from the perfectly knotted silk tie to the leather briefcase that probably costs more than his weekly paycheck. Thompson knows this routine has seen it play out countless times before, defendants trying to project success and respectability, showing up to court in borrowed or rented finery, thinking it will somehow erase their rap sheets from existence. His voice comes out gruff and authoritative, echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged space as he demands identification and court documentation, watching closely for the telltale signs of guilt that usually follow such requests. But the man before him shows none of the typical nervous behaviors. No shifting eyes, no fidgeting hands, no sweat beading on his forehead, just that same unshakable confidence that keeps triggering Thompson's suspicious nature. The crowd around them has begun to thin as most of the morning regulars make their way to their designated courtrooms, but a few lingerers remain, watching the scene unfold with poorly concealed interest, their presence only serving to heighten the tension crackling through the air. Thompson feels his fingers twitch near his weapon, an unconscious reaction born from years of street patrol, where any confrontation could turn deadly in the blink of an eye. Even here in the controlled environment of the courthouse, old habits die hard, and something about this man sets off every alarm bell in his veteran officer's mind. Maybe it's the way he stands too still or maintains eye contact too perfectly, or perhaps it's simply the fact that in Thompson's experience, people who look this polished showing up for court appearances usually have something significant to hide. The morning sun continues its slow creep across the marble floor, creating long shadows that seem to underscore the growing tension between the two men, while more courthouse staff drift past, some slowing their pace to observe the brewing confrontation. Thompson can feel his fellow officers watching from their posts, ready to respond if needed, even though logically, he knows everyone in the building has already passed through security. His instincts continue screaming that something here isn't right. The expensive suit, the confident demeanor, the lack of nervous energy, it all adds up to a picture that doesn't quite fit. And Officer James Thompson has built his entire career on investigating things that don't quite fit. But in this moment, as he stands blocking the path of this well-dressed black man, his hand hovering near his weapon, while morning light streams through the soaring windows, he has no idea that his next actions will set in motion a chain of events that will fundamentally challenge everything he thinks he knows about law enforcement profiling and his own deeply rooted prejudices. Michael Richardson maintains his steady gaze locked onto Officer Thompson's increasingly uncertain face while reaching into his pristine leather briefcase with deliberate slowness, his movements precise and purposeful. Worn from years of courthouse experience, the morning light streaming through tall windows catches the gold embossed lettering on his credentials as he withdraws them with a fluid grace that speaks of countless similar moments. The silence in the marble hallway grows heavier as other courthouse staff and visitors slow their pace, some openly staring now as Richardson holds up his Department of Justice badge and federal prosecutor identification, letting the gold shield catch the light while Thompson's face transforms from suspicious authority to dawning horror. The credentials gleam under the fluorescent lighting, leaving no doubt about their authenticity or the massive error in judgment Thompson has just committed. Richardson allows himself a small satisfied smile, not born of cruelty, but rather from years of similar encounters that have shaped his approach to such situations. His Harvard law degree and numerous successful prosecutions having taught him that sometimes the most powerful response to prejudice is simple, quiet competence. The gathered crowd has grown larger now, phones discreetly recording the moment as Thompson visibly struggles to process the revelation before him, his hand finally dropping away from his weapon as the full weight of his mistake crashes down around him like a collapsing house of cards. Richardson maintains his professional demeanor despite the electricity crackling through his veins, remembering similar moments throughout his career from law school to his first major cases when others underestimated or prejudged him based solely on his appearance. The morning sun continues its steady climb, casting long shadows across the courthouse floor. While Thompson seems frozen in place, his earlier confidence shattered by the golden shield still held steadily before him. Other security officers at their posts shift uncomfortably, watching one of their own caught in an undeniable display of racial profiling, while Richardson allows the moment to stretch, letting the silence speak volumes more than any angry words could achieve. His credentials remain extended, catching both sunlight and fluorescent glare, a literal bright spotlight illuminating the darkness of prejudice. Even in these hallowed halls of justice, where Lady Justice stands blindfolded, yet some still see only color. Richardson thinks of his teenage son at home and similar situations he faces daily, remembering the conversations they've had about maintaining dignity in the face of prejudice, about using education and position, not as weapons but as tools for change. The weight of his law degree, his years of service, and countless successful prosecutions all crystallize in this single moment as he watches Thompson struggle to find words that could possibly excuse or explain away his actions, but they both know no such words exist. The gathered crowd continues to grow, their whispers echoing off marble walls, while Richardson finally lowers his credentials, sliding them back into his briefcase with the same measured grace with which he withdrew them, his expression remaining neutral, yet somehow conveying volumes about power, authority, and the consequences of assumptions. The crowd in the courthouse hallway grows larger as Officer Thompson stands frozen, his earlier authority melting away like ice in summer heat, while phones record the unfolding scene, capturing his reddening face and trembling hands that have finally released their hover near his weapon. The morning light streaming through towering windows seems to spotlight this moment of reckoning as courthouse staff, attorneys, and visitors gather in a loose circle, their whispers bouncing off marble walls, creating a symphony of judgment that echoes through the space. Some wearing knowing expressions, having witnessed similar scenes before, while others shake their heads in quiet disappointment at yet another display of prejudice in a place meant to represent justice. Richardson remains perfectly still, his credentials now tucked away, but their impact still reverberating through the air like aftershocks from an earthquake, while Thompson opens and closes his mouth several times searching for words that refuse to come, his entire worldview seemingly shattered in the space of a few heartbeats. Other security officers at their posts shift uncomfortably, torn between loyalty to their colleague and the undeniable wrongness of his actions, their own hands now consciously away from their weapons as if to distance themselves from his mistake. The gathered crowd continues to grow as word spreads through the courthouse like wildfire, drawing more spectators to this impromptu theater of consequences where a simple assumption has exploded into something far more significant. Thompson feels sweat beginning to bead on his forehead as the weight of dozens of eyes press down on him like a physical force, while his mind races through possible responses, each seeming more inadequate than the last in the face of such a monumental error. The sunlight streaming through the windows has shifted, now casting long shadows that seem to point accusingly at his position, while Richardson maintains that same unshakable composure that had initially triggered Thompson's suspicions, a composure now revealed to be born not of deception, but of hard-earned professional confidence earned through years of legal excellence and countless similar confrontations. The whispers in the crowd grow slightly louder as more phones appear recording this moment for posterity, while Thompson finally manages to step backward, his earlier blocking stance crumbling as the full implications of his actions begin to sink in like poison in his veins. Some observers wear expressions of grim satisfaction at seeing justice served in its own unique way, while others simply watch in silence as the scene continues to unfold with all the gravity of a Greek tragedy, played out in modern dress beneath the soaring ceilings of this temple to justice. Michael Richardson speaks with measured precision, his voice carrying through the marble hallway with the same authority that has won him countless cases in courtrooms across the country, his words cutting through the tense silence like a perfectly honed blade, as he informs Officer Thompson about the 3 major cases awaiting his prosecution today, each word deliberately chosen to highlight the stark contrast between assumptions and reality. While the gathered crowd hangs on every syllable, their phones still recording this masterclass in professional dignity, the morning light streaming through courthouse windows catches the gold buttons on Richardson's suit as he explains how racial profiling cases frequently cross his desk, highlighting the bitter irony of this morning's encounter without raising his voice or showing anger, his calm demeanor serving as its own form of indictment, while Thompson stands rooted to the spot, his earlier bravado completely evaporated in the face of such composed authority. Richardson continues outlining his suggestions for discussing proper police conduct and implicit bias in his office after court proceedings conclude, his tone remaining professional yet carrying an unmistakable weight of authority earned through years of successful prosecutions and countless similar encounters. The gathered crowd shifts and murmurs as Richardson details specific examples of racial profiling cases he's prosecuted, his words painting vivid pictures of systemic issues while maintaining perfect composure, every syllable carefully measured to educate rather than antagonize. Thompson visibly shrinks with each new detail, his face cycling through shades of red as the federal prosecutor continues his impromptu lesson on constitutional rights and professional conduct in law enforcement. The morning sun, now fully streaming through the towering windows, creates a natural spotlight on this unexpected teaching moment, while courthouse staff and visitors continue to watch, transfixed by the scene unfolding before them. Richardson concludes his statement with a clear explanation of the legal ramifications of racial profiling, his words hanging in the air like a sword of Damocles, while suggesting that this incident could serve as a valuable learning opportunity rather than a career-ending mistake, his measured tone never wavering as he outlines the path forward through education and understanding rather than punishment and retribution. Michael Richardson strides into courtroom 3 with the confidence of a seasoned gladiator entering his arena, brushing past Thompson as he makes his way to the prosecutor's table, his leather briefcase making a soft thud as it lands on polished wood, while he begins arranging his files with practiced precision. The morning sunlight streaming through tall windows illuminates his workspace as he prepares for battle, his shoulders squared beneath his expertly tailored suit. Other attorneys entering the courtroom immediately sense the electric energy emanating from the federal prosecutor, some recognizing him and whispering to their colleagues about his legendary win record, while Thompson takes his position at the security post, his earlier confidence replaced by visible discomfort as Richardson begins his first case. the words flowing like honey and striking like lightning as he presents evidence, weaves narratives, and dismantles defense arguments with surgical precision. The judge leans forward, captivated by Richardson's masterful command of both law and courtroom dynamics, while defense attorneys shift nervously in their chairs, watching their carefully prepared arguments crumble beneath the weight of his expertise. The gathered audience, including several young law students who regularly observe proceedings, sit spellbound as Richardson transforms dry legal arguments into compelling stories of justice, his Harvard law education evident in every perfectly crafted sentence, every strategic pause, every devastating rebuttal. Thompson watches from his post as the federal prosecutor systematically destroys opposing counsel in case after case, his earlier prejudices seeming increasingly foolish with each brilliant legal maneuver, while Richardson never acknowledges his presence, keeping his focus entirely on the proceedings at hand, yet somehow making each victory feel like a personal reminder of the officer's monumental error in judgment. The courtroom atmosphere grows increasingly charged as Richardson builds momentum, his reputation for excellence on full display. As he handles complex legal questions with ease, his responses drawing occasional murmurs of appreciation from the gallery, while defense attorneys struggle to counter his flawless preparation and execution. The morning sun continues its journey across the sky, casting dramatic shadows through the courtroom windows as Richardson dominates the legal battlefield, his presence commanding respect from everyone present, while Thompson stands witness to the very excellence he had so quickly dismissed based on nothing more than appearance and prejudice. As morning bleeds into afternoon, Richardson systematically dismantles every defense put before him, his courtroom presence growing more commanding with each passing hour, while Officer Thompson watches from his post, his face cycling through deepening shades of red. With every masterful legal argument presented, the federal prosecutor moves through his cases like a grandmaster playing chess, anticipating opposing counsel's moves and countering them 3 steps ahead, his Harvard law education evident in every precise objection, every devastating cross-examination, and every eloquent closing statement. The gallery remains packed throughout the proceedings, drawn by whispered rumors of the earlier confrontation and staying to witness Richardson's legendary courtroom skills on full display. Defense attorneys wilt under his relentless prosecution, their carefully prepared strategies falling apart beneath the weight of his superior preparation and execution, while Thompson shifts uncomfortably at his post, each victory hammering home the magnitude of his earlier prejudiced assumptions. Richardson never acknowledges the officer's presence, yet somehow each win feels pointed like arrows finding their mark in Thompson's professional armor, as the federal prosecutor systematically proves his excellence in ways no badge or credential could match. The morning confrontation hangs heavy in the air, as Richardson secures conviction after conviction, his arguments flowing seamless and unstoppable, while spectators whisper about both his legal prowess and the security officer's monumental mistake. The courtroom windows now cast afternoon light across the proceedings, illuminating Richardson as he delivers final arguments that leave no doubt about his mastery of law and justice, while Thompson stands witness to the very excellence he had so quickly dismissed based on nothing more than skin color and prejudice. The federal prosecutor's victory streak continues unbroken, each success adding another layer of irony to the morning encounter as he demonstrates precisely why appearances can be devastatingly deceptive. The afternoon wears on, with Richardson dominating the legal battlefield, his presence commanding respect from everyone present, while Thompson endures his post assignment, each moment feeling like an eternity as he watches the man he tried to stop prove himself a master of these hallowed halls. Later that afternoon, Richardson welcomes Thompson into his corner office, the space speaking of power and success, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's skyline and walls lined with degrees and accolades from 2 decades of legal excellence. Thompson enters with slumped shoulders, expecting career-ending fury, but finds instead a calm discussion space as Richardson gestures to a leather chair across from his impressive desk, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the Persian carpet, while the federal prosecutor begins sharing stories that transform the morning's confrontation into something unexpected and powerful. Richardson speaks of his teenage son Marcus, describing how the straight-A student athlete gets stopped by police weekly while driving his car to basketball practice simply because he's black in an affluent neighborhood, his voice remaining measured as he details the talks every black parent must have with their children about surviving encounters with law enforcement. Thompson listens with growing understanding as Richardson describes his own experiences through law school and early career years, the countless times he was mistaken for a defendant or asked to show extra identification, his Harvard law degree and federal credentials, Somehow never quite enough to overcome deeply rooted prejudices, the federal prosecutor shares these stories not with anger but with purpose, each carefully chosen example, illuminating the daily reality of existing while Black in America's justice system. His words painting vivid pictures of subtle discrimination and dangerous assumptions that shape lives, and sometimes end them. Thompson finds himself leaning forward, absorbed in Richardson's narrative as the prosecutor describes how his position of power allows him to challenge these prejudices not through punishment but through education and understanding. The afternoon light shifts through the office windows as Richardson explains how moments like this morning's confrontation can become catalysts for genuine change if handled with wisdom rather than vengeance. His experiences having taught him that transformation comes not from shame but from awareness. While Thompson begins to see his actions and assumptions through new eyes, the weight of 2 decades of similar encounters evident in Richardson's measured words and careful examples. The transformation unfolds gradually in the weeks following the confrontation as Officer Thompson not only enrolls in voluntary bias training but becomes its most vocal advocate within the department, his personal experience becoming a powerful testimony that changes hearts and minds throughout the force. While Richardson watches from his federal prosecutor position, noting how sometimes the most profound changes come from uncomfortable moments, the training sessions expand beyond their original scope as Thompson shares his story with fellow officers, describing how a single morning and one powerful conversation shifted his entire worldview, inspiring others to examine their own biases and assumptions. Richardson occasionally visits these sessions as a guest speaker, his presence a reminder of both authority and wisdom, as he shares insights gained from decades of experiencing and prosecuting racial profiling cases. The courthouse atmosphere subtly shifts as word spreads about the incident and its aftermath, other officers becoming more conscious of their interactions, while Thompson emerges as an unexpected champion for change, his previous reputation for tough enforcement transforming into one of thoughtful awareness and cultural sensitivity. Richardson continues his successful prosecutions, but now notes subtle differences in courthouse security interactions, his presence commanding immediate respect not from fear or status but from the ripple effects of one powerful teaching moment. Their initial confrontation becomes a case study in police training sessions across the city, demonstrating how education and understanding can transform potential conflict into opportunity for growth. Thompson speaking candidly about his assumptions that morning, while Richardson adds legal context about the broader implications of systemic bias. The story spreads through law enforcement circles, becoming a catalyst for departmental policy changes as other precincts learn from the experience and implement their own bias awareness programs, proving that sometimes the most powerful lessons come wrapped in moments of discomfort, and that true change often begins with a single moment of transformed understanding.